I guess I'll scooch in.
Hello.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wow, enjoy our fire. Okay, well, thank you for gathering around the warmth of our hearth. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our home. And I would love to chat with you about things not related to combustion. So, would you guys mind taking a moment to please introduce yourselves? In whichever order you prefer. How about current chairs first?
Exactly.
And then has-been chairs second.
Yes, I'm Emelianenko. I'm the current chair of the math department. I've been in this role since 2021, so it's my third year. And I'm a former associate director for QSEC, which I unfortunately cannot really sustain anymore with the current level of my activity, but it was a great chance to really work with this whole team of amazing people. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you for coming on such short notice.
Hi, some of you might know me already. I'm also the former chair of physics and astronomy. So I have been chair for 7 years, and then on my 8th year is time to move on and let somebody else take over the job. And I know Patrick for a long time since he came to the department. So QSEC, in some sense, in collaboration with other stakeholders in the university, they started in physics and it had been in conversation with him. So I have been, knowing the progress of QSEC and also the quantum effort in the university. And I try to support as much as I can. And I will try to continue as well in my next chair role.
The once and future chair. There we go. So, well, thank you guys for joining us on such terribly short notice. We really appreciate it. I was wondering if maybe we could start with a very global question of what is your perspective on the field, the importance of quantum technology, whether that's computing, whether that's sensing, whether that's communications for kind of the universe. I want to try to keep everything kind of focused on the university, but feel free to broaden it out to the planet or species if you like. But maybe hearing just kind of your perspectives on what you think about it.
Well, we should go first.
Put me on the spot. First of all, disclaimer out there. I'm not, my own discipline was not in, or is not in quantum mechanics or quantum science. But as a physicist, I do see the fact, how both science and technology moving forward in a way that, all the thing that we use right now, right, it has quantum mechanics in it. That's what I tell my students anyway, right? And then I think now that we are to the point that I think that is, both in terms of basic science and also some of the initial application like quantum computing, quantum sensor, like what you mentioned, is actually to the point that we get to the point that we actually can touch and develop something that actually will be more in line with what we do in the current society. So I think it's also important for the next generation, not just physicists, to actually have some knowledge of what those are. Because if they don't know what the physics behind, the quantum mechanics behind the tool they use, and then what's the point? And also for talk about businesses, healthcare and things too, right? If they actually use quantum computing or the sensor in their lab, then they also need to know what the implication and what the drawbacks are. And one thing that I guess I can see in physics too, and how people misinterpret physics, they always put something unknown with unknown and then say that explains that. So quantum mechanics explains consciousness or something, right? So I want people to also understand that's not the case. So there should be a practical, should be a more realistic way of understanding what the basic science is. And the next frontier is quantum science in general, quantum information in general. And I want that to be, I guess, a general knowledge for everybody.
Great. So I'm a mathematician, right? And I have not known about quantum computing much until very recently, actually. And the first time I heard about it was when I was in grad school, and we had a couple of people interested in that direction, but everybody thought they were like lunatics, like they didn't really do anything that anybody could understand. And in fact, it was kind of well-accepted knowledge that nothing will come out of this whole idea. Okay, but that was like back in early 2000s, right? Like that was where things were in the mathematical community. And so I kind of I was keeping an eye on the development, but wasn't really into it. And then recently, when I think I got kind of engaged with the quantum center more on the material side, I actually got exposed to this whole big community that has actually happened to exponentially grow possibly in the last 20 years or so. And with all the progress that's been made on the experimental side, how much promise actually it holds for the mathematical community was obvious, right? And so kind of the question was very broad, like I will not go into species level for sure, but let me just say for the math community, because that's kind of what I maybe can relate to more closely. My appreciation for this area has grown a lot in the last couple of years, but also I would say I think the appreciation of what it holds for the mathematical science, because people have been talking about redeveloping calculus in all sorts of ways, and everybody again like looks at them that they're crazy, but in this case it is really something that can come out at the level of really redeveloping the quantum mathematical language and speaking in terms of gates, quantum gates, and linear algebra, and how it all fits together, and how we can actually help develop the algorithms that work faster, exponentially faster sometimes. So I think it's a huge promise, and it's a huge impact that can be felt by a lot of people in the scientific community, not just in physics, and kind of working closely with physics community, with computer science community, with engineering community is where those advances will happen. So the question is how we train people to think in that way, and how to really convince people that it's worth putting their effort and their time, especially people who haven't been working in this area, which is challenging for them to really go outside of their realm of familiar things and step in the non-comfort zone. But I think that the more people will see things that can impact their domain and say, oh, okay, so we actually have an algorithm that can be implemented on this quantum computer and work faster. Of course, we don't have the machine yet, but we might have it in 10 years or so. So I think that's really powerful. And I think that, training students, training faculty to think in that way is what we need to be doing. And so, as I said, I think that the challenge is really in rethinking how we approach these topics fundamentally from interdisciplinary standpoint. And so that's, I really appreciate all the efforts that, Patrick and Jessica and everybody else in the Quantum Center have been part of to really make that transformation, at least at Mason, but I think it goes well beyond the immediate Mason community.
So these are really good points that you're bringing up. So I was just kind of curious, since you both have had a role of chair within the past 2 to 3 years, how have you had what is going on, and forgetting QSEC for a minute, but just like, how have the developments in the field of quantum and the growing relevance of it, has it impacted your advising for students? Has it impacted your hiring, your course developments? Is it part of the conversation? I think we did Paul first, so we'll go right back to Maria.
Yeah, so I think it's great. We actually there are several things that you mentioned that are actually very impacted our department for quantum sense. So we have hired our first quantum scientist, which is Michael. And so he is our joint faculty appointment between mathematics and CS, which has never been tried before. So he's really the guinea pig. Sorry, Michael. And so, what resulted from this is, there's a curriculum impact grant that Michael and Jessica are working on, and a bunch of other people that are trying to put together new programs in terms of quantum education at the master's level, but also undergraduate courses, and that Ming Tian is teaching and Michael is teaching. And, you're asking about training. When we see that students in those classes are not just from math, but they're also from CS, also from physics, this is what is changing, right? Like, I don't think we had this at all this time, right? Like, we didn't have a lot of courses that were populated by such a diverse population of students. And it's challenging. It's very hard to teach in a class. Like, sometimes we have a topics class that is taught in this way. Like right now, we actually have a quantum field theory class that is taught in that way. And it's also 50-50 physics and math. And, sometimes math students struggle with physics concepts and vice versa, right? So it's not an easy task, but I think like now that we have this in place, we can, we go through this exercise, we become better at doing it and training students who, even though they might have not gotten the whole picture of, let's say, a CS concept or physics concept, they can look further and teach themselves and get better at it. So I think from math perspective, it's been a huge impact.
So you're thinking like with this kind of cross train, I
Yeah.
guess, right? Like, so that awareness, that foundation in it is enough to kind of alter their thinking, guide their approaches. Hello, come on in. To whatever is going to be
That's
coming up
basically it,
next.
yeah.
Same question for you.
Yeah, I think physics, by nature, I think since, condensed matter material has always been the topic, so it kind of naturally kind of grew out from physics to have more, I guess, support or student interest or faculty interest in it. So, I guess since I was here, even before that, we have been actually focused also hiring faculty in like material science, in particular quantum materials anyway, right? So, and then also there was the support initially starting with the maintenance class in quantum computing. It started many years ago already. But I think what is a challenge, I think, is really now is trying to get outside of physics too. That's what I say. Getting computer science interested, getting we're glad to have the applied math, and math is interested. But I think it's still, I think it's a hurdle in some way, at least for the administration, to understand that this is not just a physics domain or math domain, right? And then I think actually Jessica also teaching a more gen ed class this year and trying to kind of try to bring in more general interest, into the topics. But it's still difficult to get other people to sign up for it because the structure of how university also set up the classes, if you're not like for your major, sometimes students might not want to take it, right? So you need to build it into the general like an ecosystem.
That is a pretty significant challenge. I was wondering if you could kind of speak to, and then we'll do Paul first and then you. Kind of speak to like, how do you think that the university could position itself to handle these challenges? I mean, Mason's ongoing motto, at least until April 26th, is altogether different, right? So like, how do you think we can augment our educational approaches to increase awareness while also not compromising, right, on actual, information content, right? Like, so, because in a lot of cases, students may not want to veer from the typical standard introductory track, and some things I had heard at one point at QEDC was like, maybe we should teach quantum before we teach classical, since it's technically more foundational. But thoughts and opinions.
Well, one thing that I'm thinking, right? One thing I think the structural side, I think that can help, although I think it will be more from our physics curriculum development side. Put those kind of general education class onto the Mason core. So that they become something that can satisfy the requirement.
Okay.
Right. So that I think would bring down some hurdle.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think we already kind of talked about internally within physics too. We develop some kind of certificate in the undergraduate side. Right. So that can help to generate some interest. People, I think students want to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Right. Either satisfy the requirement or get a certificate or degree out of it. So if you are just saying that, oh, just general interest, liberal art kind of idea.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
Yeah.
So
Mary, this will be your last, because I know you have to run.
Oh, well, sure. Thank you.
So throw you off.
In 30 seconds, how do we change the institution?
It's on the ground now.
Right.
Change the foundational stones.
Well, I mean, it's a very complicated topic, but I think, so what I feel would work great if we could get something happening from, so instead of kind of individual faculty and the individual groups rallying to make some change, for the institution, for the central administration to actually guide the process and offer help and support early on. Because what can happen is, so why are students not taking, let's say, a math class? Because it's not part of their, it's not part of their program, right? It's not going to help them achieve their degree. So cross-listing is key, right? Making sure that the advisors are actually telling the students about the opportunities to take these classes. But also, if there are, for instance, some ideas coming out of this group that can translate into creating a transdisciplinary program that would actually benefit all students across campus, this shouldn't be a fight that this group puts together. It should be there should be some process in place to support these efforts and think through like what is needed for each program to participate, right? And of course, there are a lot of rigid structures in place, there are prerequisites in place, but if this is a conscious effort, I think it can happen and help the whole university community. But I mean, simply speaking, I think more course listing should be happening, and this has been the model that we put in place for our courses, which works because this attracts students on the other side, and that convinces the faculty to actually teach it to both populations, because they, the university is giving credit for both the instruction and the students. So
But receiving credit is really key,
yes,
for both the faculty side and the student side. You need there always it can't be from the good of the heart, right? Like it has to have
right,
a clear value proposition.
exactly.
I didn't mean to suggest that we're throwing you off. I just wanted to be mindful of your time. I know you have a lot to
Yeah,
get on your
I
plate
have- I have
today.
You did me by myself.
Yeah, yeah. So
But Paul knows more about
No,
this,
no.
so he's a good person to.
well, let's thank Maria.
Thank you very much.
And then there were two.
Oh, boy.
So Paul.
Patrick. I would think it's hard, but I know that you, I mean, actually you have been working on this on the state level, because
Wow.
I'm thinking about that, in some way we would develop a cross interdisciplinary program or new program. There has to be some kind of a drive from even high up, like states say, I'm going to become this focus for Virginia to develop, or and then it will have some financial or administrative support for it.
So I'm definitely feeling my feet to the fire in this instance, but this is a good point. And this is something that I think is frankly, to me, the pathway is unclear as to how do you interface with the state? Who do you interface with the state? And it's something that I think we need help learning about how to do, because you want to do it effectively and efficiently. I mean, cold calling every representative until you find that one who's gonna, help champion your cause is not really efficient. But on the other hand, can't wait for somebody to solve your problems for you. So how we, I mean, I think, I use this example often, but Maryland as a state has a very visionary way of thinking about these sorts of things. I mean, they've been funding, direct funding their cross-disciplinary quantum stuff for 30 years. And it's total $300 million of investment over 30 years. And I don't expect Virginia to be, and one big difference is that we have 4, top tier, major, large student population universities, whereas they have, 1, right? Like, and then, smaller other state schools. So the scale of what needs to be supported in Virginia is a little bit different. But, some kind of sustained support is what allows you to take risks, right? People are going to be more innovative when they aren't skirting at the, I hate to use a metaphor for like hunger or something, because that's a real problem for a lot of humans. But in terms of doing research, where you're going to be most innovative is when you have the ability to take those risks, where it's not a risk on a federal grant where it's bonkers idea. Like having some baseline steady support is really critical to launching some of these cross efforts. And I think the state level, that I don't know that that's viewed in terms of an effective, I don't know if basic research and education is viewed as an effective way to achieve that. I think there's a lot, I think that it's more thought of in the later stage, in the technology translation stage, and less so realizing that where you really, the way you get to that technology translation stage is really seeding that early level research, early level student support, and the timeline for it has to extend beyond an administration. I think that is something that is a challenge for us as well, this regular cycle of it has to be almost a generational kind of thinking, because we are trying to build this everything we're doing right now, right? Like most of us are mid-stage or mid to late stage in our careers. I got a lot of gray, right? It's coming in.
I'm not here.
It's a function of the number of kids. But we are building for the next stage, and I hope if we can find a way to communicate that message, and this should be an easy sell.
Well,
I
right
mean,
now I'm just thinking,
right?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there, right?
Yeah.
The buyer was the one that actually took classes here, trying to understand quantum computing so that he can be more effective in legislating, right?
Yeah.
So do you even know who his teacher is here? Maybe that would be kind of like, at least the initial.
Yeah.
Right, and a key or a vested interest. So
That's a really good point. And maybe we should stalk him.
We should bring him in.
right,
Yeah, that would be great.
I know that he's always been, sounds like, from what he's saying, the topic and things, like he's into technology and things, so. Right,
That's a great idea. I'm gonna get it.
and he's
I
definitely
think one of our members had the idea that we should knock on the door literally of every billionaire in the Northern Virginia region, which is a number less than 10, but greater than 2, which is a little surprising to me. And I think they were serious, and but it's not a bad idea.
never heard.
So in terms of the future for, we are approaching the end of our time, which is probably a relief for you. But in terms of the future of, Mason is a very young institution, and while that has costs to it, there is the benefit of being able to chart a forward agenda, like thinking to still alter the institution, it's still being molded and shaped in a lot of ways. Do you think, first of all, that this should become an important focus for kind of cross-college focus for the university going forward? And I mean, that's a yes or no, so I'm not gonna let you get away with that.
Yes.
But yes. And what does that look like?
What does it look like?
How do you think a university could structure itself with this area as one of its pillars? In a way that is,
Back to the other one, I think the historic silo between the discipline like engineering, science, humanity, that has to somehow be lessened.
Yeah.
Right. It is an infrastructure. For a student here, they might not know, but it is like difficult to set up classes. Like I say, one faculty in one department, sometimes difficult to teach in the other department because there is the teaching law requirement that you have to teach for a department, otherwise not. And a student also have to take classes in this major to satisfy the number of credit in that major before they can do that. There's not enough general credit. Like engineer, if I remember when I first joined here, it's 20 years ago or 25 years ago, right? There was still quite a few number of engineering students. They were doing double major in physics, but now it's almost non-existent because the fact that the number of classes that require for engineering major is high. Also for us, it's high. So it's very discouraging for them to actually do that because they can't do it. So how you do that? This is long-term, yeah, that barrier has to somehow go down. But short-term wise, there's a new administration coming in, the proposed side, and hopefully they will see that they're more value in kind of interdisciplinary program like what Maria was talking about.
yeah, because you always have a fixed number at the end of the day that the students have to meet, and they're paying for every dollar, right?
Yeah.
So or every hour that they're taking. So do you think that an approach where you have more specialization early would be helpful for this? Or is that time to kind of, when you're young and figuring things out, kind of
I see.
flounder really?
So you have to
important?
talk about even topic specific, right? So
Yeah,
in the sense that
yeah.
should the idealized person in quantum science and quantum information, do they need all those physics classes in mechanics, quantum mechanics?
Yeah,
I would say no, not necessarily. Even for what you need to do, let's say the application is in healthcare or something like that, help people to understand, how to use a quantum sensor or quantum computer. You might not need to know the basic of like E&M or even the basic, some basic quantums.
yeah,
Right. So you don't need to go through the whole spectrum of all the physics degree all the classes before you get to that point. So really identifying, I think is in the case, what are the applications that you see in 5 to 10 years, then what are the preparation needed, but really what are the basic ones?
Well, I think we'll open it up for a few questions from the audience. Comments or complaints are fine.
So what is the average like number of students, like engineering students who are taking any physics courses?
Well, in introductory they require, right? But we would like, if they have the credits, right, they would take some of the major class, but usually they will end with the introductory sequence. And currently, actually, I would say rare.
Yeah, we
Rare
don't
as in
do
like less than like handful, even in like decades.
Like for classes that Patrick you previously listed, like a no prerequisite and that, right?
Those might have one or two more.
Those, that is, Jessica, you might know more about that than either Paul or I. What was a breakdown of your, because it was the very first time your class was taught, right?
This semester.
Yeah.
So teaching this course this semester, we've got 6 students. 2 are actually our university graduate students in engineering who are doing quantum.
Not our own Mason student.
Not, but then the other 4 are Mason undergraduates. We've got 1 mechanical engineer, 1, I think, 1 IT and 2 CS.
Oh, so perfect.
good.
No physicists.
No physicists, I have no physicists. Well, I mean, again, which makes sense in some ways, right? This is a class without the math, without sort of the quantum requirements, so. Well, it may be that in the longer run, we not think about what physics students take, especially if it's in that first year. It probably would be appropriate for a lot of our students, because we're trying to look at it.
But ideally, though, when you look at the population of available engineering students, if you talk about only 4,
Yes, we would
Right.
like to see.
exactly. So,
But
how to open it up?
This is where I think having a physics number attached to a course like this is tough, right? Engineers often.
Yeah.
Take a course that's the.
Exactly.
Physics.
Or COS, make it become COS class. Just
Well,
general.
yeah, that's sort of the next step. So I think as we're looking at the master's program and the others and thinking about what prefixes we can put on things, which is actually the way we're at. And always going to be the question, can we get one that's not even COS but broader? And, if not, then the cross listing question, as Maria mentioned, but again, attracting students, figuring out how to also get visibility. It's really,
Yeah,
That's right.
really
Not a cross listing, in other words, it's sort of a back, around the corner way.
Yeah.
Making it first, that you normally not to totally try to make it.
Yeah.
But you make an agreement with the other party of the cross list, and then it becomes secondarily.
Yeah.
We have done that with some other.
Yeah, giving you numbers in other departments so that they can see it.
I want to make sure we get to the one student question. Do you still have your question?
I have a similar question. How important is the physics do we do wanna, I guess for STEM, right, talk about a little bit of other fields that you might not have to know one if you this or that, but how important do you think it is for a STEM major? I'm a computer engineering, but I don't really understand
The raw physics.
Actually, I would say that the introductory sequence, I think all students should take it. That's basically the overview and all the basic topics, right? But, for physics major, usually you will take additional in-depth major classes when you get to the junior 300 level, 400 levels. So I think that part, is the one that if you're an engineer, then depending on what your application is, then you might or might not pick some of the topics, right? So like if you're in quantum computing, then you might not want to take, the physics versions of, like I said, electromagnetism, right? But if you are in quantum devices and then developing quantum material, then I think you need to take at least some quantum mechanics beyond the introductory sequence. That's probably true.
Yeah, and I think, so if you're in computer engineering, I mean, some of it also depends upon, what your anticipated track. Is it a hardware track? Is it a software track? I will say that you know, we were on, Mason was on the first ever survey of the quantum industry in terms of what skills they want. So we have the first ever survey of 60 companies, multiple scales, and we focused less on degree, and we focused more on skill. And we asked them to self-report these things, and we asked, and what was interesting to find was that they wanted quantum skills, but what they wanted more were traditional excellence, excellence in traditional skills. So if you're a hardware person, you better know photolithography really well. You better know device design really well. You better understand how electric fields and current flows work on chips, Schottky barriers, things like that. You know, how do you make a good device? And then they wanted kind of a sprinkling on top of it. They do, it depends also what your terminal degree is. You know, if you're going to do a 2 years, and there are a lot of places working on 2-year degrees now for like somebody who wants to be a technician for a piece of quantum hardware. So what kind of understanding do you need to have of cryogenics? If you want to be at the BS level, you know, they probably would want just a good traditional electrical engineering / computer engineering training with training in quantum and how it connects to the devices. If you're a master's or PhD, they would expect more, you know, stronger coursework, stronger capabilities in that space, and a lot more demonstration of your actual ability to make some kind of device related to it. So I think that, you know, what the answer is it depends a little bit, but I do think something that we haven't talked much about up here is research. And that is where you really can pick up a lot of those extra skills right now in a hands-on practical way, and a way that you can then share with a company if you're trying to be hired. Look, I went beyond the curriculum. I tackled a project that had no clear answer, and I learned a lot of valuable skills. And that's what I can bring to you, you know, when I come to your company, right? You have a demonstrable achievement of success that is not completing problem sets, right? Or reading from a book or passing exams. It's actual practical hands-on. So I think the most important for you at your stage would be to get paired with a faculty member and get down to business, doing some work in there. And you know, you'll find out you'll get a little more clarity about what specifically you might need along the way. And you know, we're in QSEC, we're happy to help with that. We do fund some undergraduate research. Mostly we leave that to Oscar, but we certainly can help pair you with a mentor. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Oh, yes.
So that's one question, but on the hardware track saying PCB department, what would be like the course of the day covering this? Like maybe 5 minute course.
Level.
So if you're on the hardware track, I don't know that we necessarily have, so hardware courses are they're harder to develop than software courses. So we tackled software first. I think we're thinking about moving into hardware more. There is an ECE course on nanoelectronic engineering, I think ECE 611, which you probably are going to get stuck teaching at some point. I don't know. But those kinds of courses are relevant. There is a good book I ran across I can recommend to you later. I don't want to be recorded recommending a book. Just because they're not paying me. But maybe that's more attractive to it. But it's basically Quantum for Electrical Engineers is the book, like quantum devices. And so it gets into some of the, you know, thinking about, you know, the wave functions on your devices rather than just thinking about modeling the electromagnetic properties of your devices. So I would actually talk to Ethan.
He's already my class.
Oh, he is?
So I'm teaching now electronics.
Oh, you're teaching it right now?
Electronics for PDC, which covers a little bit of quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
So for example, your students need to know what is Hamiltonian, you know, how do we deal with Schrödinger equation, you know, for device and engineering applications. I don't really go very deep, like we physicists do, but I'm just touching, you know, the basics of quantum that's needed for engineering. But I think, so we already know.
Okay. Well, keep doing what you're doing. But on the physics side, I had a student who was wanted to do an engineering track, and he took this course. So he was physics, but I had him take a couple ECE courses to get him to have that experience and knowledge around devices in generally. So there's a bit of cross training that can happen and should happen. And you know, how we do it in a way that's maximally effective and doesn't duplicate a bunch of courses and waste a bunch of people's time, I think is a question for the faculty in QSEC and beyond. So these are both great questions from you guys. Thank you.
As what I'm saying, as a, you know, you're an engineering student, right? Yeah. So as I think your description is more like, you know, for physicists, like in your case, you know, taking with some background and then taking some engineering classes. I don't know, would you think that like for engineering student in his case, taking something like 502, which is like baby quantum, would it be helpful as some on the basic side, the theory and things? Or is it too much? You know,
I think it could
do we
be
develop something
useful.
else?
Or if we think about how we teach that course, because I think, I don't know in detail how we teach it currently, right, but we tend to be very, very. And I think there is growing space to think about, I mean, other courses doing the real full quantum, but maybe not coming at it from a abstract theoretical way of thinking more about how it connects a little bit to applications. I would love to see us think about, you know, in those courses, how do we approach it?
Right, that's why I was trying to think is
So not
from
very-
the 684, right?
Right, where
Yeah.
684 is very much for our
For physicists.
physicists, whatever, I think there is space for that one to be fully quantum, but maybe not quite.
That's why when it's something in, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is potentially stuff that you could do there by being intelligent about how you design your problem sets,
Exactly.
right? Like, so this problem set involves like 2 qubits. These qubits are entangled, changing it for being like qubits rather than being like a, you know, random electron or like, right? Like the culmination of the problem is like an interconnect or something that converts quantum information from like a matter state to a photonic state or something like that. You could conceive of making them have more of an applied feel. Definitely to have people think more about the technology. I don't know though if it would be, it all depends a little bit on what's needed kind of for the rest of the class. I mean, I think when JD took the nanoelectronics course, he was obviously extremely well prepared on the quantum, the foundation side of it. So he found that trivial, but he was not well prepared for the electronic side of it and how it actually connects to a real chip.
Right.
I think our students in physics lack that awareness. I think it also affects their competitiveness if they try to go out on the job market at the BS level. But on the flip side, there's certainly going to be electrical engineering. Having a better theoretical foundation could be very helpful for an electrical engineering student, because how do you innovate beyond what you have unless you have a strong foundation and the scientific basis of it? So there's always going to be a question of how do we achieve that balance well? And I think the best way that we can come about with answers to that question are talking amongst our faculty from different disciplines, and also bringing in our colleagues from industry and talking with them about what they're seeing when we send our students out. And this curriculum impact grant has been a great way to do that for the software track. I think we still need to gather some more. We need to maybe think more about the hardware track and how we could you know, properly, you know, prepare you guys for it. I mean, one thing that we got as a feedback years ago was that physicists need to know system engineering if they want to actually get into an engineering job. And that was like I asked them like the number one reason why they would hire an engineer over a physicist, and they said systems engineering, like not digging down into the incredible minutia of a problem, but instead thinking about how whatever you're working on is part of a larger construction. So that was very interesting. Yeah. But I think we are out of time by 15 minutes. I would like to thank Paul. Let's thank the ghost of Maria. And thank you guys for your time and attention. I think we'll reconvene again. We'll do an ultra short lunch break and we'll reconvene at around 1. 1. All right. So commence. And online people, thank you as well.